Yeah, you. Tired of split ends and knots? Not your beard, the wood. Yeah. What are you going to do with it? Are you kidding? There's still meat on those bones. Get back in the shop. Since I get most of my wood from local sawyers and I get it rough cut, these cracks and knots are just par for the course. So once I had a bucket full of them, I just rip them down and get whatever usable size I can out of them, anywhere from 3/8 to 3/4 inch strips. Now my doweling jig runs in 1/16 inch increments. So whatever size that blank is, I set my doweling jig for that size, taper both ends on the belt sander to make it easy to start and fit in the drill chuck, and then I run them through that size. And then once they're roughed in that way, I pull them back out and readjust the jig to a 1/16 smaller and run them through again. This ensures a nice smooth finish on the dowels. Now, out of that little bucket of scraps, I ended up getting a nice bunch of white oak dowels, some cherry dowels, and a handful of little bitty red oak dowels. Now, I found this picture at a yard sale and got it for $1 and thought it would make a great form for some wooden epoxy projects. Unfortunately, you can see that it's a pretty heavy taper from the top to the bottom, and I struggled to get these straight dowels in there in a fashion that looked presentable, symmetrical, whatever. I mean, it just wasn't working. So out of frustration, I just dumped them all out, sat down with a hot glue gun, and glued them in one at a time, waited for it to dry. Now that centerpiece is just the leftover stem from my pumpkin project. I tapered that down into a cone and used it as a filler to hold everything in place and to take up space so I didn't waste so much epoxy. Worked out great. When it came time to mix up the epoxy for this project, I wanted to go with a color that would accent the wood or highlight the beauty of the wood and yet add a little bit of dazzle without overpowering it. So I went with some dark wine and a little bit of black sparkle. Then I just slowly poured it into the mold, little bit at a time, to make sure that it seeped down into all the little crevices and spaces between those dowels. After 3 days in the pressure pot, I took this piece out, popped it out of the mold, cut the jagged top off on the bandsaw, cut a tenon in the bottom, flipped it around, got it in the chuck, and started kind of trying to shape this piece and get it to where I wanted it. I was going for the look of a tulip vase. Unfortunately, because of that heavy taper in that picture, I wasn't able to do that to get all the layers of the dowels to show up. So I just kept carving away until everything looked like it was in place. Once I had the shape done, I put the steady rest on and used a series of Forstner bits to hollow out the inside, and then I used some carbide cutters to finish shaping and smoothing out the inside to the wall thickness of about 3/8 of an inch. With this piece shaped and formed the way I wanted, I then sanded the entire thing down from 80 to 320, gave it a nice coat of sanding sealer and let it dry, and then again sanded it from 320 to 400. Then it was time for a couple coats of spray poly to seal everything up. Well, folks, it's all done. I don't think it turned out too bad. Not exactly the shape I was going for. It kind of reminds me of a Pilsner glass now, but kind of had to go with it to get all the different dowels to show up at the different levels. So I had to go with the shape that the wood told me to. So after I gave it that couple coats of poly on the lathe, I let it dry overnight, sanded it down with 400, 600, and 800, and then gave it 2 more light coats of poly. And I think it turned out pretty nice. I like the way everything runs on an angle, alternating white oak to cherry on the big ones, a red oak and white oak in the middle, and hollowed out nice and smooth. So then I had a few extra dowels left over, so I decided to throw them in a container with the same epoxy, and I just cut them into little chunks first and made a little bud vase slash votive holder. I drilled out the center, so if you wanted to put like a dry arrangement in there, you could, or then tiered the second drilling so that votive fits in there nice. So as usual, I'll put up some glamour shots at the end, and thanks for watching Last Breath Woodworks.